The first question here is that the Prime Minister in the House of Commons mentioned encouraging trends in data yesterday. What are those trends?
So first of all, the numbers of cases are actually going down despite a high level of testing. Secondly, and more importantly, the number of people going to hospital is right down. And the number of people in hospital, and especially the number of people on a ventilator, that's dropped precipitously over the last few weeks. And it's all to do with the way the virus has evolved. You know, it's difficult to think of the virus as a friend, but what it's trying to do is to learn how to live with us and to be tolerated by our society, because that's the way it can survive forever. It doesn't want to kill us. And so the Omicron and the BA2, the variant of Omicron, they're all ways in which the virus becomes more benign, less threatening, and allows it to become endemic. So the epidemic comes to an end. No one can say which day the pandemic ends and when it becomes endemic. That's the problem. And I think Boris's call, end of February, seems reasonable, looking at all the data.
It's reasonable to end a requirement to self-isolate if you test positive for COVID, because inevitably that will lead to people spreading COVID.
It will, but if you look at the population now, 90% are either vaccinated or had COVID, something like that. Sure, there are some vulnerable people, especially those with cancer, which is my specialty, that are on drugs that may suppress their immune system. But the healthy people, there's no problem. Just like the common cold, just like the flu, we don't send out signals like this, self-isolate immediately if you get the flu. And we've got to get to that point at some stage in this whole business. Otherwise, we'll be living with it forever. Fascinating to look at country comparisons. Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, totally different approaches, trying to get to zero COVID. It's not possible. This thing is far too pervasive. It infects very easily. And if it doesn't cause serious illness, it's like the common cold. We've got to learn to live with it.
Or perhaps like the flu, which of course still does kill people. Learning to live with COVID isn't saying that there'll be that there won't be pressure sometimes, that there won't be deaths, sadly. But I suppose the question that the Prime Minister may well have asked himself is, if not now, then when?
That's exactly right, Tom. It's you've got to make a decision at some point, and you've got to free up all the travel rules. That's much more difficult because different countries have different advisors, and they come to some sort of consensus that may be different from ours. So some countries are stricter in terms of entry requirement than others. And Spain was announced yesterday they were going to continue wanting children over 12 vaccinated. So a lot of people switched their holidays from Spain for this half term to Portugal or to Greece, where they don't want it. There's no logic. I mean, the most illogical things are the Welsh and Scottish, who always want to do something different. And whether it's mask wearing when you go through the Severn Tunnel into Wales, or going up to Scotland on the night train, you're supposed to come out in Glasgow wearing a mask. It is ridiculous to have these petty little changes around the country. But internationally, I can see the reason that people come to different conclusions, and they have to go too, for the travel industry and for people's enjoyment, to be able to travel again freely.
Yes, indeed.
I suppose just finally in this conversation, some people might well be saying, well, Nicola Sturgeon extending restrictions for much longer. What happens if the number of deaths in Scotland is proportionally a lot lower than the number of deaths in England going forward? Might there be political consequences then?
There might be, but it's very unlikely. I mean, Wales and Scotland tend to be stricter than England. Having said that, Welsh NHS didn't introduce a mandate to vaccination for its staff. England did, although it was cancelled at the 11th hour. So it's just completely illogical, and it shows how politicians are playing another game than the scientists. And of course, the scientists are disappointed it's come to an end. They're no longer important for us. The epidemiologists and the guys on stage, they think, well, that's it. It's over. We can go home now. And they don't want to. They want to be in the limelight, and that's part of the problem in every country, not just here.